There is a saying out there that goes like this, and the saying says, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. Which means that the way we say something actually can communicate as much or even more than the actual words that we're using to say it. So your tone, your volume, your body language, these things can greatly influence the message that you're trying to communicate and the message that is being received by others. Let me just give you a few examples of what it is I'm talking about. Let's say, for example, someone were to say, or I were to say the words, "I'm fine." Now, if I were to say these words with a cheerful tone and a smile, "I'm fine," then it communicates that actually I'm pretty content and I'm happy. But if I were instead to say, "I'm fine," then actually it communicates just the opposite. I'm not fine. I'm not content. I'm not happy. And maybe I don't even want to talk about it, right? It's all how you say it. Or take this one, for example. That's interesting. Now, if you communicate this with a certain amount of excitement, "Oh, that's interesting," it says that you're curious and you're genuinely interested. But if you say it with sarcasm and a bit of a dismissive tone, like, "That's interesting," then it actually says, "I'm not that interested, and I'd rather not talk about this, and I'm skeptical about what you're about to tell me." Here's another one. "I'm sorry." If you say these words with genuine remorse in your voice, "I am so sorry," then it really does communicate an apology. But if you say it and you have no remorse, like, "Geez, sorry," then actually it communicates just the opposite. You're not sorry at all. And my point is this: it's not just what we say, it's how we say it. It makes a huge difference how we say things. It is really important for us to understand that fact when we come to today, to Good Friday. Because on Good Friday, Jesus says a whole lot of words to us, and some very important words. And these words are words we need to hear and we need to understand, absolutely, for sure. But in order to actually fully understand what it is Jesus is saying to us, we have to understand not just what he's saying, but how he is saying it. You see, all Lent long, we have been looking at Jesus' famous last words, the last words that Jesus spoke as he hung dying on the cross. But today, we come to his final words. These are perhaps some of the most famous final words ever spoken in all of human history. You may not even go to church that often or that, but you probably still have heard these famous last words of Jesus. So important, so powerful to understand. But in order to figure out what these last words of Jesus mean, we need to know not just what he said, but we also have to know how he said it. So let's start with the easiest question. What did Jesus say? What were those final last words that he spoke? Well, I think if whether or not you've been to church, you've probably heard, and we just heard in the reading this morning, that according to the gospel writer John, when Jesus came to the end of his life, the final words he spoke were this: "It is finished." He spoke these words, "It is finished," and then he breathed his last. So there you go. That is the what. That is what Jesus said, his final last words. But that, of course, is only half the answer, right? Half the story. It's one thing to know what he said, but it's another to know how he said it. How did he say these words? Because the way he said it changes drastically what these words actually mean. It can mean very, very different things. So, for example, if Jesus said the words this way: "It's finished. It's over. It's done," then you know what? He's saying these words as a man who is completely defeated, a man who is going out of this life with a whimper. He's despairing and he's dying. "My hopes are shattered. My dreams are dashed. My plans have all come to ruin. It's finished. I'm finished. It's all just finished. Is that how he said it? Is that how those words sounded? I have to be honest to you. For many years, that's exactly how I thought it sounded. I thought that in this moment, when we heard Jesus speak these words, what we were seeing is we were seeing Jesus at the very bottom. This was Jesus at his weakest and most desperate and most forlorn and miserable moment. Jesus' life is just ebbing out of him, and he manages to say, "It is finished." That's how I used to think these words sounded. But I don't think that anymore. Over these past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to do a bit more studying and looking into these final words of Jesus, and I've come to a different conclusion. I've actually come to realize that the scriptures tell us not just what Jesus said, "It is finished," but they actually do tell us how he said it. And how did Jesus say these famous last words? Well, I'd never really noticed it before, but if you put it all together, it's pretty clear. And here's the amazing thing. He shouted these last words. He shouted them. You see, Matthew tells us that when Jesus had cried out in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. He shouted at the very end. And Mark tells us that Jesus let out a loud cry, and then he breathed his last. So Matthew and Mark, they say, "Hey, listen, let me tell you something. We saw this, we heard about this, and man, oh man, it was amazing." Right at the very end, the last thing Jesus said, it was loud. He shouted it, he yelled it. Now, it's interesting, Matthew and Mark don't tell us what he said. They just tell us how he said it. John, on the other hand, comes along and tells us what he said. It is finished. It's finished. Now, there's a little more to this. And that is, "it is finished" is actually just one word in Aramaic, the language that Jesus would have spoken. And it's actually just one word in Greek, the language that the New Testament is written in. And that one word was this Greek word, tetelestai. Tetelestai. And it means to complete something. It means to finish something. So let's put it all together, folks. When you put what was said together with how it was said, and realizing that it really was just one word that was said, then I think this is probably more how it sounded. Completed. Finished. Done. Tetelestai. Finished. And that's very different, isn't it? Has a very different sound. It's all in how you say it. And if Jesus said it that way, finished, well, that means this is not a cry of defeat. "Oh, I'm finished." No. It's a cry of victory. And that means that actually then Good Friday, what we're doing here today, Good Friday is not just a sad and solemn day, but it's actually a day of celebration of some sort, some sort of accomplishment. Something's been finished. Finished. Done. Mission accomplished. You see, months earlier, Jesus had been talking that he was on this mission, right? He was doing something. He began talking about the part of his mission was going to be that he was going to go and suffer, and he was going to die, and then he was going to rise from the dead. In fact, halfway through Luke's gospel, he says, "Hey, listen, the Son of Man, me, must suffer many things, and must be rejected, and he must be killed, and on the third day he'll be raised to life." And then we're told that Jesus resolutely set his face toward Jerusalem. His friends said, "No, Jesus, you can't go and die. No, Jesus, you're misunderstanding. That's not the mission." But Jesus says, "No, you don't understand the mission. This is my mission." So as strange as it is, Jesus says, "This is my fate. This is where I'm going. This is where the story goes." And so when Jesus says, "Finished," he's completing what he started. It's not a cry of agony. It's a cry of completion, a cry of accomplishment. See, it's not just what Jesus said, it's how he said it. I hope you guys are starting to see that. It's all about the how. Hey, you want to know how Jesus said this? Let me give you a few examples. Jesus said this like a servant would say it, like a servant who had just completed a task for his master. And the servant would go back to the master and he would say, "Hey, master, tetelestai, finished. It's all done. I've done what you asked me to do." That's how Jesus said it. He's the ultimate servant, right? He served others. He laid his life down for others. And at the end, he says to the Father, "Father, tetelestai, it's all finished, completed. The work is done that you gave me to do." That's how he said it. That's how he said it. You want to know how he said it? Jesus said it like a soldier who is returning from battle where the soldiers have been victorious. And as he's walking back into town and he's waving to the townspeople, he's saying, "Tetelestai, finished, completed, victory, victory, tetelestai." That's how Jesus says it. He says it not giving the last gasp of a worn out life. He says it declaring victory over evil, victory over sin and death. That's how he says it. Or hey, you want to know how Jesus is saying this? We know what he said. You want to know how Jesus says it? He says it like an artist. Like an artist who has been working on this great painting, this great work of art, this great sculpture. It has taken so long. And now that it's finally done, the artist, she stands back and she looks at it and she says, "Tetelestai. It's done. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's finished." That's how Jesus said it. See, God has been working this wonderful work of art, this wonderful tapestry, God's plan to save the world from the beginning of God's story to the very end. And Jesus' death is the final stroke in that work of art, in God's masterpiece, tetelestai, right? It's finished and it's good. Right? That's how he said it. Or how about this? What if he said it like a prisoner? That's how he said it. He said it like a prisoner whose time is finally up after being in jail. If a Roman citizen was put in jail, there was a notice posted by his cell that would say how long he had to serve and what his crimes were. But then eventually one day the judge would walk into the prison and he would take that down and he would scratch out the bottom and he would write at the bottom of the certificate of debt, he would write tetelestai. Tetelestai. And the prisoner would grab that and he would yell, "Tetelestai, it's finished. My time is finished. I'm a freed prisoner." And that's what Jesus is saying. That's how he's saying it. Because we now are freed prisoners. Jesus has paid a price that we never could have paid by ourselves. And he's paid it on our behalf and he has freed us and set us free from the prison of our sins and so on. Tetelestai. Freedom. Finished. That's how he said it. Hey, if you still don't know how, remember, you got to know how. Maybe he said it like this. Maybe he said it like a merchant would say it, a shopkeeper. People come into his store and they say, "I'll take a little bit of oil and I'll take some grain and I'll take a length of rope." And when they go and they add it all up, the merchant gives it to the customer. The customer gives the merchant some money. And then the merchant, the shopkeeper would write at the bottom, "Tetelestai, paid in full. Nothing else is left owing. Have a great day. Tetelestai." That's how it sounded. That's how it sounded. Or here, you really want to know. Let's end with this one. You really want to know how it sounded? I think it sounded like God sounded when the Creator, who made this amazing world, we're told that on the 6th day, he finished it. He completed the work. And then he rested. Tetelestai. It's finished. And now Jesus, on the 6th day of the week, Jesus too has completed his work, not of creating the world, but of redeeming the world. And so Jesus can sit down and he can say, "Tetelestai, it's finished. The work is done." Do you understand? It is not just what you say, it is how you say it. The how is so important. But we're not quite done just yet, because there's something else we still need to know, and that is, how do you say it? When you say it's finished, how do you say it? Because there's actually more than one way, there's actually two main ways that people say these words, "It is finished." You see, a lot of people, they go about their life and they say it like this: "It's finished." They live their life like they're defeated. They live lives of guilt. They live lives of shame, lives of fear. They live lives of condemnation. They feel so beat up by life that everything they do and everything they say, it just seems to communicate, gosh, it's finished, right? We hear our past say to us, yeah, it's finished. We hear people say to us, you're finished. We hear that voice in our head saying, you're not good enough. You're not attractive enough. You're not smart enough. You're not successful enough. You're finished. And we believe those voices. I'm finished. It's finished. That's how some people say it, right? Or maybe there's some stuff that's happened in your life in the past, right? You had some very bad breaks, and some people hurt you. You experience some really unfair situations, and you carry that bitterness with you, and you carry that loneliness with you, and that anger wherever you go, and you live a life that is like defeated and despairing and discouraged and disappointed and depressed. And so you know how we say it? We say it, it's finished. My hope is finished. My joy is finished. I'm finished. That's how some people say it. Is that how you say it? Because that's not how we should say it. At least that's not how we should say it anymore. Because when Jesus said, finished, he wasn't just talking about his victory, he was talking about yours as well. When Jesus says, finished, he wasn't just talking about his amazing purpose, he was talking about you too. When Jesus said, it's all done, tetelestai, he wasn't just talking to himself. He was talking to you. And he was talking to me. He was saying, that guilt you feel, finished. Those hurts, finished. The anger, the bitterness, that inadequacy you feel, finished, finished, finished. Instead of lamenting all your problems and your addictions and your troubles and saying, I guess this is just the way I'm going to have to live my life. I'm finished. No, that's not how you say it now. Now you say it this way. You announce to your addictions, finished. You announce to your hurts, finished. You announce to those things that control you, finished. Those habits, you don't control me anymore. Those hurts, you don't hold sway over me anymore. It's finished. Right? Christ has redeemed me. You're finished. The price has been paid. I am free. I am clean. I am whole. Finished, 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 finished. You can tell the past, finished. You can tell the pain, finished. Tell your worries, that is not who I am anymore. Finished. And those voices that are constantly telling you, oh, you're not good enough, you're not attractive enough, smart enough, you can shout right back at them. You can shout back at them, finished. I know who I am. You're finished. It's finished. I'm a child of God. I'm redeemed by Jesus Christ. You can say with the Apostle Paul, thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. It's finished. You can say, in all things, we are more than conquerors through him who has loved us. Finished. Tetelestai. It's not what you say, my friends. It's how you say it. And so tell me, what is it you are living with today? What is it you are going through today that you need to say, it's finished? Not I am finished, but it is finished. How you say it makes all the difference. And because Christ has said it, we can say it too. Because you know what? His victory is our victory. His future is now our future. And that means his words are our words too. Complete, accomplished, finished. Thanks be to God. Amen.